Hola, el día de hoy vamos a empezar una serie de videos que tuvieron que ser grabados por una razón muy sencilla. Nuestros invitados el día de hoy viven en Inglaterra, Martín en Australia y yo en México. Y como saben, coincidir en las horas es bastante complicado. Y bueno, buscamos una hora que fuera conveniente para los tres y hicimos esta grabación previa y el día de hoy la vamos a compartir. El tema es la verdad bastante interesante. Hemos recibido comentarios sobre trenes europeos, sobre cómo es el modelismo o el ferromodelismo en Europa. Principalmente vamos a hablar de Reino Unido y queremos platicar esas similitudes, esas diferencias, esos pequeños detalles que muchas veces no encontramos. Y tenemos un invitado de lujo que probablemente algunos de ustedes ya lo conozcan. Otros no, será la primera vez que van a encontrar. Es una mujer, sí, su nombre es Jennifer Kirk, o mejor conocido como Jenny. Ella estudió filosofía en la Universidad de Durham, en Inglaterra, y algo importante, ella es una persona muy, muy diversa. Trabajó como periodista, ha transmitido en radio, en televisión, escribió varios libros, incluso es algo muy diverso que creo que lo tocamos durante la entrevista, que es parte del ferromodelismo. No hay una sola rama del ferromodelismo, hay varias. Y así es ella, una persona muy dinámica, muy versátil, y creo que es el punto perfecto para encontrar esas similitudes o esas diferencias, conocer un poco cómo se usa este hobby, principalmente en Reino Unido. Y lo que vamos a hacer, ya está grabado, vamos a hacer la plática normal. Voy a poner un pequeño videoclip de su maqueta y algunas fotos para que puedan apreciar. Realmente es un personaje fuera de serie. Voy a poner por aquí su canal para que le den link y la sigan. Y sobre todo para nuestros amigos que les gustan los trenes europeos, creo que es algo muy, muy innovador, algo muy diferente, y se van a dar cuenta que no solo es trenes, hace experimentos, cosas muy locas, bastante recomendable. Espero lo disfruten igual que nosotros. Entonces vamos a empezar con Jennifer, o Jenny. Jenny, muchas gracias por estar con nosotros. Una de las primeras preguntas que normalmente hacemos es, ¿quién es Jenny y cómo empezaste en el ferromodelismo, en el modelaje, todo esto? Martín, ¿nos ayudas para...?
Sí, sí. How are you, Jennifer?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thank you. This is the first time we do something in 3 different continents. So I'm in Australia, Eduardo in North America and in Mexico, and of course you're in England, in Europe. So this is the first time we do this, and we are super happy. And yeah, thank you very much for the participation. And the first question we generally we ask the person who interview is, please, could you tell who is Jennifer?
I'm Jennifer. I'm middle-aged. I love building models. I blame my father for getting into this. He was always very creative, and that rubbed off on me. And I just find it extremely fulfilling to build things in miniature. And generally, I tend to be quite quick at building things, so I ended up with the nickname of Queen of Speed Modeling.
Very nice, very nice.
Bueno, Jenny comenta que ella es mujer de contemporánea, más o menos, que le gusta mucho el modelaje, empezó con su padre, le gusta mucho construir las cosas y sobre todo construirlas de una forma rápida, y comentó un nickname que le gusta o le dicen que es la reina del rápido modelaje, Queen Speed Modeling, es algo como me comentan. Y un poco para continuar, cómo surgió Jenny es, ¿qué esquema en la vida real y de modelismo te gustan? ¿Cuáles son tus esquemas de trenes favoritos o no los tienes?
Okay, Jennifer, please could you tell us what's your favorite railway, which is your favorite scheme? Obviously, for us is normally Latin American. We do a lot of North American model railroads. So we follow Union Pacific, Santa Fe, or we go in Pennsylvania going to the past. So obviously you love English trains, and please could you tell us your favorite railroad or whatever you want to say about the English trains, please?
I've really loved a lot of the railways in the UK, not just the mainline railways, but some of the things like we have a lot of narrow gauge railways that tend to be in the more mountainous regions in Wales. And I really love places like the Festiniog Railway, Corris Railway, Talyllyn Railway. But also as you get further north, a lot of the scenery gets very, very picturesque. So places like the West Highland Line and right up into Scotland as well have some really, really aesthetically pleasing railways. But I also love a lot of overseas railways too. So I'm finding myself getting more interested in North American prototypes. But also a lot of the things like sugarcane railways in the Caribbean, in Cuba. I've recently discovered those railways, and I just love the modelling prospects that they offer. So certainly, I think as I go forward, you're going to see me going more from the UK-based modelling into more North American, more Caribbean-type prototypes.
Okay, very good. Okay, lo que dice Jenny es que ella obviamente le gusta mucho, en realidad nosotros llamamos Inglaterra, pero en realidad es el Reino Unido porque no solamente es Inglaterra, es Gales, Escocia. Ella dice que le gustan todos esos tipos de ferrocarriles de su país, especialmente por la escenografía, o sea, los paisajes que de esos trenes circulan son muy lindos para modelar, pero también hoy en día ella está descubriendo otros ferrocarriles, como acaba de decir, en el Caribe, en Cuba especialmente, y obviamente los prototipos norteamericanos. Así que Jenny, si bien está basada en los modelos del Reino Unido, poco a poco se está abriendo a los otros ferrocarriles del mundo.
Y creo que en Cuba hay algunos máquinas de México. Voy a checar el dato, a ver si en la edición lo ponemos por aquí, qué máquinas. Jenny, I believe that in Cuba, Mexico sent some engines. I'm not sure about that, but I will search. But I'm almost sure that Mexico sent some trains to Cuba and other countries in the Caribbean.
I mean, I know that Cuba in particular has a very great mix. As you go further back in time, it starts out with a lot of locomotives built by British locomotive builders. And then it moves on, becomes Soviet locomotive builders were then responsible for a lot of the products. And then as you go later still, you get locomotives coming in from some of the North American builders, but also, as you say, through places like Mexico as well. So there's a really broad cross-section of prototypes there.
Correcto. Lo que nos dice Jenny, sí, traduzco. Lo que dice Jenny es que obviamente los ferrocarriles de Cuba empezaron con marcas de locomotoras inglesas y obviamente el proceso histórico de Cuba llevó a que empezaron a importar cosas de locomotoras y material ferroviario de la Unión Soviética. Así que obviamente eso lo hace un país muy atractivo y especialmente por el modelaje. Me gustaría comentarle a Jenny, si disculpa, paso la otra, Eduardo, la relación entre Argentina e Inglaterra en los ferrocarriles o el Reino Unido. Así que le voy a contar. Jennifer, I'm originally from Argentina, and Argentina is a country with a big history with UK factories and brands of locomotives, and obviously all the railways in Argentina made by English and in some cases by French. The relations, Argentinian railways was part of England until the Second World War, and then England decided to sell the railways to pay a debt of the Second World War or something like that. So English Electric was one of the favorite locomotives in myself when I was a kid, for example. We used to call one special model the Cricket because it looked like a small cricket, and beautiful locomotives. So let's say the relation between UK, England, Argentina is very special for all the fanatics of trains. So how you feel like as a really, you live in a country really to invade the railways in a way and put locomotives everywhere in the world. How is you feeling? Because it's like, everything came from England.
It's very interesting because it means that there's a lot of, certainly when you go further back to, and we're still building steam locomotives, a lot of the products that are actually fairly familiar in terms of what they look like in the UK, you see them turn up all around the world because they've been exported to Australia, New Zealand, China, South America, places like Argentina, Chile. There's this huge spread of some very UK-looking locomotives. I mean, there's one particular class of locomotive, the Stanier 8F. They've operated in almost every country in the world that has railways that are the same gauge as the UK. They're so widespread, and they're instantly recognizable wherever they are. And it is an interesting feeling to see how that engineering has been exported around the world.
Bien, correcto. Lo que hablaba con Jenny es que obviamente la relación entre Argentina e Inglaterra, pero le preguntaba qué se siente vivir en un país que exportó, que abrió el ferrocarril a otros países del mundo, y ella dice exacto, que justamente cualquier país prácticamente hay modelos compatibles con los ferrocarriles ingleses, y sea Australia, India, Sudamérica o algún otro país, encontrás que es ingeniería inglesa exportada.
Y un poco continuando lo que sería la historia, ¿no? Y la importancia, me gustaría, no sé, preguntarle a Jenny, ¿cómo fue el click, cómo fue el boom de voy a empezar? Porque, bueno, ya saben que Jenny escribe y hace muchas cosas. ¿Cómo empezó con el click del ferromodelismo? ¿Cómo decidió hacer su canal de YouTube, transmisiones, todo esto? ¿Cuál fue el detonador? Okay, Jenny, talking about history, I was talking... When do you have this click in the mind, like, oh, I would like to share my hobby, I need a YouTube channel, I need a web page? How this happen?
It's one of those things people do ask me a lot, like how did I start on YouTube, how did I make the channel quite big? And it just kind of happened by accident. Originally I started on YouTube in sort of, I think it was around 2006, 2007, but it was for my work-related business. So I'm a published author, and I was doing book signing tours. I also worked on radio. So I would just put up little videos about all of that. And then I can remember I put up one off-the-cuff video detailing my hobby, which was, it still is, model railways. And that video did so much better than any of the others that I thought, actually, maybe people want to see more of this. And it just grew from that. And then the writing and the radio presenting work fell by the side as I moved on. But I just found that there was this huge community online who wanted to build models, to see models being built. And it just went from there. And then, here I am. 13, 14 years later, it's just like kind of happened.
Yeah, that's great. Bueno, comenta que fue un poco de casualidad, que empezó hace 13, 14 años. Ella empezó a publicar algo, pero relacionado al trabajo, nada que ver con el ferromodelismo. Y entre esas publicaciones hizo un video de construcción de trenes, ¿verdad, Martín? Y recibió muchos likes.
Era como más ella contaba de la vida y contó que hacía trenes, que era un hobby. Se presentó, correcto.
Y se dio cuenta que ese video le fue muy bien, que recibió muchos likes y descubrió que, bueno, existe una gran comunidad. Ella comentaba que estuvo en la radio, en la publicación de libros y todo esto, pero eventualmente dejó esto y pues, prácticamente se dio cuenta que, pues bueno, había una gran comunidad y había un gran, por decirlo así, mercado, comunidad, y es donde, bueno, después de 13 años, el día de hoy estamos platicando y celebrando todo esto.
Perfecto. Le voy a preguntar sobre su otra vida, digamos, fuera del ferromodelismo, autora de libros. Creo que trabajó en la radio, también DJ. O sea, tiene una historia muy rica. Jennifer, leaving for 1 second the trains. We know your life is, you have many things you did, like you were a DJ, you mentioned you worked in a radio, also you wrote books. I never have the chance to talk with the person who wrote that book, so that's very very
this
nice.
is the first time for me too.
Yeah, so please could you tell something of your life, how is the process to write a book really and launch it, and how the feeling, that's must be amazing.
I've always had a personal philosophy of always take a chance, and then you'll never be sorry for what might have been. And I think that's been the single driving force. And when it came to writing books, I've always loved being creative, writing short stories, going back as far as I can remember. And that just, I suppose, through just building on my love of writing and creativity, that led to becoming a published author. I did several successful book signing tours. I've got a couple of science fiction books which did really, really well in about 2010. And then unfortunately in that area, what happened was printed books died, and things like e-readers, like the Amazon Kindle, completely took over, and it changed the dynamic of writing. And at the same time, YouTube was becoming a big thing. I'd already established that people wanted to see more about the model rail side of things, more so than the book writing. And so I kind of found myself drifting over, and whilst I still do a bit of writing, it tends to be more magazine articles. I write for various magazines in the UK and also a few in Europe as well. But it's just simply a case of grasping opportunity when it comes along, and never being frightened to try something.
Okay. Mira, Eduardo, ahí como siempre destacamos una frase de nuestros entrevistados. Ahí Jennifer nos dio una, que obviamente que siempre hay que tratar, y porque después no nos arrepentiremos de nada. O sea, otra de las frases que podemos anotar para nuestro libro de
Sí, voy a empezar a anotar, ya tenemos varias frases. Me gustó esta, Jenny, de prácticamente tomar la oportunidad para no arrepentirte.
Correcto.
Y un poco más de la traducción de lo que dice Jenny. Habló un poco de que escribía, pero pues bueno, las editoriales se murieron, la gente empezó a ver YouTube, salió Amazon, muchas cosas, pero yo creo que es esa chispa de agarrar la oportunidad, atreverte a hacer cosas diferentes. Creo que es como que el punto clave de lo que nos comenta Jenny.
Y mira cómo se hace el link con lo que el último entrevistado, con Joe Fugate, que él creció a través de ese cambio, y fíjate cómo la perjudicó a Jennifer.
Así es.
Jennifer, we say every time we have an interview or we have somebody in our show, we take a phrase like you say, please do something you don't regret. So that's your phrase, so this is going to be your title. And also I was commenting with Eduardo, we have the opportunity to interview Joe Fugate, so who is obviously in charge of the Model Railway magazine online, and he said the opposite. Like I say, for him, the change was on the same time, but going on internet, took advantage and he launched his product. So it's the two faces of the coin.
Yeah, and I guess as well at the same time, something I didn't mention was that as I got bigger on YouTube doing the models, there also came television opportunities specifically around modeling, and it was kind of a perfect storm. So it kicked off with a TV series called Biggest Little Railway, and what we actually did was we laid a model railway from coast to coast across the UK, albeit we picked the narrowest bit of the country. It was still 72 miles, which is quite a long distance for a model railway, and there was a full TV series with that, and through that it kind of proved that the public wanted to see programs involving model railways, involving this creativity. And I found myself getting asked to be involved in future series. So I did a competition-based series called Great Model Railway Challenge. And that's actually where I got my nickname, the Queen of Speed Modeling.
Okay.
And then subsequent to that, I've just finished filming a program about the company called Hornby, which is huge in the UK. Maybe not quite as much around the world, but certainly in the UK, they're like the brand that everybody knows about. And I've just filmed a 10-part series around that, which I've been tasked with making some very creative, very unconventional model railway related builds.
That's very important. Please let me translate some part of this. Primero, espero que Univision, Televisa, Cable y Sky y todas las otras marcas hayan escuchado programas de tele hablando de trenes, de ferromodelismo. También el último programa que comentó para Hornby, sí lo conocemos muchos de este lado, obviamente sabemos que es como que la marca, yo creo que el líder en Reino Unido, como dice Martín, y eso es muy, muy importante. Lo que ella estaba comentando, que no solamente era la parte de YouTube y todo esto, sino el impacto que tuvo hacer programas de costa a costa, ¿no, Martín?
No, el de costa a costa es, intentaron, fue como un reto, digamos, era un programa que era unir las dos costas de Inglaterra. Entonces fue a un lugar donde había 72 miles. Do you say, Jenny? The coast to coast was 72 miles?
Yes, that's right.
So in kilometers is around
140 kilómetros.
120, más un poquito menos. 120 kilómetros que hicieron correr un tren de costa a costa, y eso fue el primer programa que hicieron, y eso largó unas series de programas de ferromodelismo. Realmente fue como lo que los lanzó, digamos, a hacer más programas. Y eso es lo que le voy a comentar a Jennifer. Yo había visto algo parecido también que habían hecho en Inglaterra, que era una competencia entre Inglaterra y Alemania, que hicieron correr un tren modelo en una de las viejas, en uno de los viejos ferrocarriles en Inglaterra. Le voy a comentar eso. Y le voy a comentar sobre Hornby de los trenes a vapor vivos, que eso sí que la rompieron en todo el mundo.
Okay.
Nos puede contar. Jennifer, I was during the translation to Eduardo and for all the people watching, I commented in Australia, it wasn't your program, but we watched a series. There was a kind of a competition between England and Germany, and the Rhine model railway between using one of the oldest lines in England. So very popular here, that show. So like I say, every time we go, I can't remember the person. I think he worked in the doing experiments, and that was
James
fun.
May. Is that
James May? Of course, I know James May from Top Gear.
Yes.
James May is from Cars.
Yes.
Yeah, I know the show.
I think I mentioned to Eduardo that Hornby did some. It's very in Australia. It's kind of popular because obviously it's a lot of people from England living in this country, but the models really they put Hornby up there was the live steams models. I had the Flying Scotsman and the Mallard, and they were amazing. I couldn't believe it, like a brand could make a little model with live steam. That amazing, and they should make more of them. Really impressive models.
Okay, Jenny, talking about you mentioned Hornby, that is I believe is the most important in UK, and I can see in the back that you have the layout, your layout.
Yes,
kind of small country. I like model railroad because you have many aspects, because you have scenery, you have DCC, you have wiring, you have wood, carpinteria. But we have many things, and for example, you, Jenny, you are a really complete person. You were a DJ, you write books, you have many facets. In the model railroad, what is your favorite? I'm just asking that. Let me translate this. le dije que el ferromodelismo es muy completo, que tiene muchas facetas, DCC, carpintería y otras cosas. Y Jenny es muy completa, libros, DJ. Y le estoy preguntando, ¿qué es lo que más le gusta ahorita del ferromodelismo de todo esto? Yeah, okay, thank you.
For me, it's the creative side of building actual landscape. I think I like the most, but building models is, I think in terms of a hobby, it gives people the best grounding in so many different skills. So rather than just being focused on doing one thing, if you get bored of doing the electrical side of things, you could do the woodworking. If you get bored of doing some woodworking, you can lay some track, you can run some trains. There's so many different things. I think it's a hobby that you never get bored of. But for me, I love doing landscapes the most.
Okay. Martín, ¿entonces?
Sí, ella dice como vos decís que el hobby es muy completo, que obviamente puedes hacer carpintería, puedes hacer vías, puedes hacer escenografía, pero para ella lo que más le gusta personalmente es la escenografía, es la parte que más le gusta. Le voy a contar obviamente de sus videos. Ella hace muchos experimentos, creo que también es bastante científica, y me encantó uno que es el que hizo correr un motor hasta que no diera más. Jennifer, I think you are also a person who would like to do experiments with model trains. You have a very popular video about running a little motor until that motor can't run anymore. So
yes. And I've also done things like running trains upside down. Using magnets. And actually the I can't say too much, but the TV series that I've just filmed, there may or may not be a locomotive running completely upside down in I can't say too much, but it's really, really good.
Okay, that's thank you for the tip. Sí, Jennifer nos dice que sí, le encanta hacer experimentos como lo del motor, pero también está tratando de hacer correr un tren invertido usando magnetos. Jennifer, you did
perdón, Martín.
About the magnets going up. So you're trying very hard on that one. You're putting magnets under your layout.
Yeah. Well, I use very, very small neodymium magnets like these, and then there's a metal plate underneath the track. So what happens is that these are stuck to the locomotive, and it attracts to that metal plate underneath and pulls the train onto the track. Yeah. And if you can make that pull greater than the weight of the train, you can turn the whole thing upside down, and it will still just run round upside down.
That could be amazing, really. Looking forward to see it.
Sí, estaba pensando, ahorita lo que estaba platicando de la serie de experimentos que Jenny hace, y uno de ellos es correr una máquina invertida. Y por ahí alguien dijo que la ciencia ficción es escrita por las personas de jóvenes, de niños que la vemos. Ya hay una película de Star Wars donde sale un tren que se invierte, es más, creo que es un tren doble, es en la última trilogía.
Rogue One, el tren Rogue minero One. De Rogue One.
Exacto, mira, exacto. Y ahí sale...
Star Wars,
ya tenemos otro hobby, pero ahí sale esa idea, entonces Jenny la está desarrollando, pero yo me acordé, lo vi en alguna película y sí, es correcto, fue en Rogue One. Jenny, we just talked that the train that go upside down. We saw a movie in Star Wars movie Rogue One. They have a train like that. I believe it's a two train, one in normal side and the other is
sorry, I correct. It was Solo movie, not Rogue
Solo?
One.
Solo movie, yes.
That's Solo movie. Well, it was in Star Wars movies. It's Solo movie. Yeah, that's Han Solo. Entonces, pero bueno, quien quiera ver la de Han Solo, ahí pasa un tren invertido y es prácticamente lo que Jenny está haciendo.
Kind of roller coaster kind of stuff. Yeah, amazing. Really, you can do that? Wow. Take my help.
Well, I was actually inspired by Escher. You know, the paintings, the weird ones where the perspective's all strange and you have people walking on the ceiling. Yeah, and that's the inspiration that I took. So this idea that you can have a train right way up, but then another one that's going upside down because the perspective is all messed around.
Wow, yeah, really amazing. Talking about amazing things, Jennifer, I'm going to ask you about Dcc Concepts. That's an English brand. Like I said, really here in Australia again is very good and they do very nice things, and I love those products.
Yeah, so like this, the S lever. And,
yes, amazing. Yes. Bueno, Eduardo, estoy preguntando, hay una marca que hace productos de DCC que se llama Dcc Concepts en Inglaterra, que adaptan casi todo para que sea más fácil de usar, que realmente es una muy buena marca, y Jenny tiene muchos videos y introduce esos productos.
Sí, perdón, déjame completar un poco. Es una marca que no hemos platicado en el canal, pero es muy buena. Yo he visto algunas cosas, aún no compro, la verdad, porque estoy enfocado más en la parte americana, pero ahí tiene unos, en inglés le llaman, creo que Dobel, no estoy seguro, son para juntar los dos layouts, dos módulos, hacen un clic. Y no
sí, pero eso no es otra persona.
Lo he visto ahí, estoy casi seguro, pero tienen una gran variedad de cosas. Sí.
Uno que le voy a comentar, y justamente hoy compré uno que es un adaptador de decoder de lock sound de 8 pines a 21. Exacto. Que es simplemente, antes tenías que soldar, y hizo un pequeño adaptador donde lo puedes enchufar y lo pones en la locomotora.
Sí.
Sí. Jennifer, I was talking with Eduardo about like how very smart things the Dcc Concepts develop. Just bought one this afternoon in a hobby house here in Australia. Is an adapter for a lock sound 8-pin decoder. So they come with the plug, and then I can put that one in a 21-pin in the locomotive. That's amazing. Let's say I used to solder and now we have plug. And
and that's really the ethos of the company, is to make products that modelers actually need without any of the extra complication. So it's about making the hobby easy, accessible, and effective. And it's not necessarily just for DCC. I know that the name makes it suggest that it's just about DCC, but there's a lot of products, things like tools, things like ballast, and also some of the scenic items which don't have to be used on DCC. So it's a really wide-ranging company, but every single product is designed to just be intuitive to use.
Correcto.
Perdón. Estaba diciendo que no solamente no se dejen llevar por el nombre de Dcc Concepts, que es prácticamente toda una tienda con balasto y herramientas y muchas otras cosas, no solamente Dcc Concept.
Claro, y lo que decía es que justamente la ética, o no, la misión de la compañía es hacer cosas fáciles para usar, que sean intuitivas, o sea, que no nos compliquen más la vida, o sea, la gente que usa DCC o DC acepten esos productos y sean fáciles de usar. Jennifer, if you talk with the people working there, please, one of the best things I saw is many years ago was the auto reverser for DCC with the lights, to know where it changed the polarity, in a reverse loop, for example. That was the first company to create that, and that was a change, because, before we didn't know which, side was working. Simple like that,
Sí, oye, y hablando de eso, Martín, creo que sería bueno empezar a preguntar qué diferencias, porque mucha gente vemos diferencias entre trenes americanos, de Australia, y más que las diferencias, yo creo que más bien serían las coincidencias entre los dos tipos de ferromodelismo, o europeo, ferromodelismo americano, ferromodelismo en Australia. ¿Cómo lo ve Jenny? Creo que sería interesante preguntar eso. Obviamente ya basada mucho con Hornby y la escala que manejan es la WO, si es WO00, que mucha gente le gusta decir WO00, que nos dé un poco su punto de vista, ¿no? ¿Cómo ve estas similitudes o diferencias entre los mundos del ferromodelismo, por decirlo así?
¿Vos le preguntás algo?
Si quieres tú adelante, está bien.
Okay. Jennifer, Eduardo is asking how you see the difference between, obviously in England, the scale is a little different to the O or 00, they call in different countries. And I think that's one in 76, if I'm correct. And then the HO is
187.
187. So how you see that different? How you manage it?
UK locomotives, the real ones, tend to be quite small compared with what other countries have. When they originally set the scale in the 1930s, electric motors were quite a lot larger than they are now. So they fudged the scale to make it all work. And then we've been stuck with that ever since, which is unfortunate because obviously there's a scale differential between HO and 00, even though they run on the same track. But I think for most people in the UK, they still feel comfortable mixing and matching, for example, with kits from companies like Walthers, say, which are in HO, with Kibri, Noch and Preiser, because the small differences aren't generally really noticeable unless you put something that is HO and an exact model in 00 next to it. Where it will show up the scale difference. So we don't generally worry too much, but it does mean that, for example, Roco do a lovely model of an S160 locomotive in HO, but if you use it on a 00 layout, it looks a bit strange because it's too small. But by and large, it's not really a big bother for us.
Interesante, yo no sabía esto que se estableció en 1930, lo que estaba comentando la escala de O, 00, y es prácticamente un poco lo que se atribuye al tamaño, ¿no? Al espacio de los trenes, ¿no? De los motores.
Vos fíjate, es lo que dice ella, es lo mismo que nos pasa con Frateschi, la marca brasilera. O sea, son 1,76 y cuando pones una de esas locomotoras en contra de una americana parecen gigantes. Y claro,
se ven diferentes, pero...
Tiene una explicación lógica.
Sí, totalmente de acuerdo. Pero mira, ese es un buen dato, que se fue en 1930 y se estableció. Y que, pero al final dice que realmente no se fijan tanto en eso, que solamente si las pones de lado y te das cuenta, como Frateschi, obviamente tú ves una Frateschi y se ve bien, pero la pones junto a una americana y es diferente.
Sí, Jennifer, I was talking with Eduardo. There is a brand in Brazil called Frateschi. They make a lot of South American models, and they use 1/76 too. So when you look at an Argentina locomotive against, I don't know, a U-25 from the US, it looks like huge. And I remember when you used to have the Flying Scotsman next to the big boy.
Yes. But of course the big boy was huge anyway. The Flying Scotsman, the real is quite small compared with some of these US models. And I do have some US models here, and when I run them on this layout, they make everything else seem really small.
That's correct.
And the other thing was the Thomas the tank. My son used to have the Batchman models. Funny things. Jennifer, le voy a preguntar a ella del Flying Scotsman. Realmente la historia de Flying Scotsman es muy buena, como es una locomotora emblemática que recorrió, la llevaron a Estados Unidos, la llevaron a Australia, es una de las pocas locomotoras que anduvo en tantos continentes, así que siente, realmente es un símbolo del ferrocarril. Jennifer, just talking about the Flying Scotsman is very special locomotive. I think, everyone in the world is proud about that locomotive. And I watched I think it was 4 weeks ago, when the tour in the US. And all the problems around, and then, they recovered the machine and they took it to Australia. It's an amazing locomotive, of course. What's your feelings? What do you think about all this?
I think it's they spent a lot of money moving that locomotive across the US, across Australia, and from what I remember, the guy who did it, he actually lost a lot of money. But in terms of making that such an iconic locomotive, I think there's no other way that you could have done it. And certainly it's amazing to see that locomotive so well travelled. But personally, it's not my favourite locomotive. I have a real soft spot for things like the A4 Pacifics, like the Mallard, Sir Nigel Gresley. I think there's 6 still survive from an original fleet of somewhere in the 30s. And for me, that they've got a very iconic shape because they're so different from any other locomotive, with that almost Art Deco inspired swooping front.
Yeah, this is the kind of streamline locomotive. No, beautiful. Le preguntaba a Jennifer sobre el Flying Scotsman y realmente sí, es una locomotora que es un ícono y que perdieron mucha plata, obviamente llevándola por todo el mundo.
Sí, el barco para llevarla.
Sí, barco, y se fundió la persona. La historia, si buscan la historia de cuando el tour a Estados Unidos, es súper interesante cómo se quedaron sin plata. Estados Unidos casi se la queda porque nadie pagó las deudas hasta que un inversor millonario de Inglaterra puso el dinero para repatriarla. Pero también nos dice Jennifer que no es su locomotora favorita. A ella le encanta lo que llaman la clase Pacífico, que es tipo la Mallard, y cuando son streamline, que son, o sea, cuando rompen la estética de la típica locomotora a vapor.
Oye, y yo ahorita hablando de eso, se me ocurrió esta pregunta. Son 2. Bueno, la primera es, ¿cómo se vive el ferromodelismo en Reino Unido? Y la referencia es esto. En Estados Unidos, la mayoría de la gente tiene grandes basement, sótano, grandes maquetas, grandes todo, puro autorrack y todo enorme. Pues, en México, en algunos lugares sí, el problema es el dinero. Los dineros no nos permite construir tan grande como quisiéramos. En Australia, pues es muy grande, pero no sé cómo sería ¿Cómo lo viven? Sino, preguntarle a Jenny, ¿cómo viven ellos? ¿Tienen clubes? Veo que hay muchos programas donde tienen áticos. Hay un personaje que se llama Everett Johnson, que yo lo sigo, lo adoro, y es en un ático. ¿Hay clubes? ¿Cómo lo vive en Reino Unido?
Jennifer, Eduardo is asking, we talk about how people, especially in the US, they have big space, to build a model. In Mexico, they have the space, but they don't have the money. In Argentina, it's the same. In Australia, it's a little complicated because the houses here, they're kind of, not designed for trains. So how is that in the UK? Obviously, this is a different world for us, a different country, right?
Yeah.
So,
in the UK, houses tend to be quite a lot smaller because the cost of real estate is so much. It's quite a crowded country. So we've probably got some of the most expensive houses per square foot of anywhere in the world. And what that means is that people tend to build very small model railways because they don't have the space. So portable layouts are very popular that people can put in the car, take to shows, things like that. I'm very lucky in that the house that I own's got a reasonable sized loft, but even so, by the standards of people who build layouts in places like the US, this is probably a really small space, but certainly by UK standards, it is really big. And I think people they'll focus on a very small part of a railway and model that with incredible detail, to get around the fact that they don't have the space.
Yeah, correct. Lo que me dice Jennifer es que en the UK es uno de los mercados de venta de casas más caros del mundo. Entonces se trata de la gente construye casas pequeñas porque obviamente el valor del terreno o del espacio. Por lo tanto, los layouts de Inglaterra son chiquitos comparados con los norteamericanos, y lo que hace la gente es tratar de construir sus layouts móviles y los pueden llevar a clubes y llevarlos. Pero, por ejemplo, ella dice que el layout que ella tiene es grande para los estándares de UK, pero chiquito comparado, obviamente, con los ingleses. Sorry, Jennifer, in which town do you live?
It's a place called Bolton, which is near Manchester.
Near Manchester. Okay.
Algo que mencioné me llamó la atención, el detallado de los layouts. Ya sabes que está el pleito que luego nos ponen por ahí con los counter y todo eso.
No, eso no te metas ahí, que no va.
No, le voy a mencionar a ella cómo es en general, cómo son en general allá. I'm talking about that. We know many people that in English they call Rubit counter. En español we call cuentarremaches. They are so perfect that they want to model exactly the wheel, I don't know, even they say, oh, my layout is on September 1 of 1972 in the evening when the sun was going down. They want the perfection. And our channel is not in the perfection. Our channel is in the middle. We are not like Thomas, but we are not so perfect. How do you consider yourself and the community in UK about that?
I think most people in the UK tend to model more fictional locations or altered real locations. I think it's very much a minority people that do an exact replica of a place in a certain time. But I guess because railways are very much in the blood of people in the UK, because there's so many of them, they've been a very much a focal point of our culture for so long. I guess that makes people like the idea of building models that resemble something that, say, they remember from their childhood, harking back to like the carefree memories of childhood. And I guess that's why. But I personally, I build a suggestion of a place and a time rather than an exact copy.
Right.
So this model railway is inspired by a real world location, but is not trying to be a copy of it.
Yeah. Okay. You know, Jennifer, when we did 2 months ago with Ken Silvestri from Broadway Limited Imports, the vice president, he said, model railway is an illusion. So we say, it's true. Like I say, obviously we have that childhood memories and we want to do it, but obviously it is a hobby, you know. Welcome somebody wants to be perfect, but this is open. This is, you know, your imagination, you know, enjoy it. Yeah.
Exactly. At the end of the day, the hobby is supposed to be fun. Exactly. And if you find what you're doing a chore and you don't enjoy it, then really you're doing the hobby wrong.
Correct.
And I've seen people who say like, oh, I really find it tedious doing this and I hate doing that. And you think, well, why are you doing that? You're supposed to be enjoying yourself.
Exacto, hay que disfrutar, es algo muy, muy importante. Yo acabo de terminar un graffiti de un autorag y lo disfrutas, es un proceso largo y tedioso, pero lo disfrutas, es lo más importante. Y le quería también preguntar a Jenny, si te parece bien, Martín, ¿cómo han vivido en específico este lockdown, este encierro, toda esta era? En Estados Unidos salió NMRAX, que es un evento virtual en internet, que está abierto creo que a todos lados, pero creo que hay una división en Reino Unido. No sé si ha participado, aparte de lo que hace, cómo disfrutan.
Okay. Jennifer, Eduardo would like to know, or for you to share with the people, that when you have the process of the lockdown in the UK with the model railway, like for example in US, they have, you know, the launch internet programs or clinics. Obviously, you're doing that already from 2006. You're coming before the lockdown. So how was the process? How the people did? I think you're out now. You're enjoying normality again, I think.
Yes.
So
I think when lockdown started, because there's a lot of model railway clubs in the UK where people will all get together and build a single layout between lots and lots of people in a club. And all of that had to shut down. All of the shows, the exhibitions stopped. And I think the internet became a lifeline for a lot of people because they were able to stay in touch with other modelers. And through the likes of YouTube and Facebook, they were able to not just share their own projects, but also see what other people were doing to still get that inspiration to fuel on their own building of models. And what we saw in the UK was a huge increase in sales for hobby-related materials, and in particular, model railways. And I think because people suddenly had to sit at home with nothing to do, a lot of them found comfort in rekindling an interest in building models. So even though it wasn't a great experience to go through in terms of personal freedom, in terms of being able to go out to places, it did give people a new awakening in their hobby itself.
Y es un proceso que se repite, ¿no? Creo que Ken Silvestre nos dijo lo mismo y Joe Fugate dijo lo mismo.
Sí, sí, sí. Y es lo que decía Jennifer es claro, o sea, la gente encontró en el hobby esa actividad que lo ayudó a superar, a pasar este mal momento, que obviamente para el hobby fue genial, obviamente no para el resto del planeta. Fue algo que en Australia fue lo mismo, fue un momento que uno no podía conseguir un balasto, ni vía, ni nada, porque claro, todo el mundo empezó a construir layouts o volver a eso, o a conectarse con el hobby, y sí, trajo sus beneficios.
Y aquí me gustaría hacer un pequeño link, o sea, esto hablamos ya del pasado, la historia, cómo sobrevivimos la pandemia, y un poco hacia futuro. ¿Cuál es la perspectiva de Jenny en un mundo que económicamente ha cambiado? Muchos trabajos se han perdido, otros se han ganado. Las máquinas Dcc andan arriba de $300, las nuevas, a lo mejor 400 euros. Pareciera que es más restrictivo para los jóvenes, pero ¿cuál sería su punto de vista? Nosotros hemos platicado, ¿no? Que creemos que hay un futuro bueno, pero sería bueno escuchar ahora el punto de vista de Jenny, de alguien que vive, ex Unión Europea, porque ya con el Brexit ya no son. ¿Cómo afecta todo eso? ¿Cómo lo ve ella?
Claro. Jenny, we talk always about the future of the model railways, and we say, like I say, for our opinion is, like I say, we think this is growing, and we have people coming, new people, but also we can see the prices, especially if you go. Obviously, in DC it was cheap before, or cheaper, and now a locomotive is $300 or. For you in pounds, and I think Europe is a little more expensive even.
Yes.
How you see that the future you see for the new generations, how they can achieve, or start really in this amazing hobby?
Well, what we actually saw was there'd been some degree of stagnation in the hobby over maybe the last 20 years. And then when things started appearing on television, so we did that Biggest Little Railway, we then did Great Model Railway Challenge, and that did a huge amount to invigorate interest, particularly with young people who hadn't previously been coming into the hobby. And by showing things being done in a very creative, a very extreme way that we were doing with Great Model Railway Challenge, it inspired a lot of youngsters to get creative. And in the aftermath of that, we started seeing whole families would have like a family project to build a model railway together as a family group. And even though we've seen prices go up actually quite significantly, I think people are more inclined now to be able to improvise in terms of making the scenery, using more everyday items, and focusing more on the creative side rather than just buying in things ready-made. The second-hand market is also a good place that a lot of people are still able to get things for at a reasonable price. And we've also seen more introductory level models starting to be brought out by companies, in particular by Hornby, which come with a lower price tag, and they might not necessarily be as well detailed, but it does allow people to still get hold of things that they can use.
Sorry, that's a very interesting point, because we asked Ken Silvestri about this segment. Well, the answer was very easy. Broadway is for some people that they want quality, and quality is price. So they don't have an accessible line. But what you are saying, that Corbin introduced a new line, is very important for the hobby. Our next show, we're going to talk with one of the main shops, e-online shops in the United States. I will ask that, what is this introduction line? What is this brand new that is not so expensive? and people can afford new. That's really important, and also that you said about the second market, that the use the imagination. And before I forget, let me translate because we speak a lot. And yeah. Perdón, es que platicó de algo muy importante. El último punto lo voy a traducir. Hornby está introduciendo una línea que es más barata, más accesible para todos. Y le comenté que en el próximo programa en vivo vamos a tener una de las principales tiendas online. Y quiero hacer esta pregunta. La persona nueva que quiera comprar un set que no sea tan caro, o una máquina, pero que sea bastante decente, ¿cuáles son sus opciones? Ya platicamos que Broadway es high-end, le podemos decir, es más caro, muchos detalles, pero necesitamos escuchar varias opiniones. Y la primera parte de cómo ve el futuro, si quieres, Martín, te la dejo para no acaparar todo de lo que dijo Jenny.
Sí, lo que dijo Jenny es como coincide con nosotros, que hubo, después de un estancamiento de 20 años, el hobby empezó a crecer nuevamente, y que sí, obviamente hay un futuro para las nuevas generaciones, y aunque económicamente sea más complejo, gracias a los programas de televisión como los que participó ella, los canales de YouTube, la gente se enfoca a usar más la creatividad, a usar materiales de uso diario para crear escenas o la escenografía en general, y obviamente apunta al mercado de las locomotoras usadas si es necesario, y si no se fijan tanto en los detalles, pero obviamente hay un futuro y creo que estamos todos en el mismo. Jenny, I would like to add also, I think the future, and even, like I say, obviously gets prices up, is the use of technology. I think the new generations, I have my son, he's 16 now, and he loves, the electronics, the design. Yeah. So I think that attracts too, to, when I say he drops the phone and go there, but also he like you say, he works in weathering and trying to do that because, he tried to model. At the end, it's like the technology is like a magnet, so you get there and then you start exploring that.
I think as well, we've seen the rise of 3D printing as being quite a big player in the market. And certainly the younger generation really kind of get their heads around that computer-aided design, creating these models in the computer space, and then being able to print them out. And I think we're going to see more of that in the future as well.
Yeah, it is amazing to get it from the virtual world into the real world. So that's the perfect link.
Yeah, that's in my to-do list. I need a 3D printer.
It's hard. It's not easy.
Yeah. You need an investment because first of all, you need a place. Then there are two types of 3D printers. Then the curate process and the painting, and you need some time before that. But it's more common. Every time is more common.
Tengo que preguntarle a hacer un link, porque ella salió de DC a DCC no hace mucho, cómo fue ese proceso. Jenny, if, please, maybe I'm wrong, but I think you long time ago you changed from DC to DCC. I'm sure, and I'm not sure how long, but that's okay. How was that process? How was the change?
So I think for a lot of people, this idea of going from DC to DCC is almost quite scary, because you're going from something that you've come to know quite well to what you see as almost being like scary computers. And actually, I found that as I went down the DCC route, I actually found it much easier than I found the DC route. It simplified the wiring. It allowed me a lot more flexibility. And now I would never go back. I found so many advantages from going down the DCC route that I'm quite an advocate of DCC. This whole layout was built to be DCC from the outset in terms of running the trains. So it's been built with every single track is one section. But with the point control, I started out on DC with a capacitor discharge unit. And then I started to discover accessory decoders, and it's made the operation of the points, the turnouts, so much easier. that I would never go back now.
Okay. Jennifer nos dice que obviamente para mucha gente le da miedo hacer el cambio de DC a DCC, pero en sus opiniones hizo mucho más sencillo el modelaje y
más
ella
preparaciones.
Nunca volvería para atrás realmente. Le encanta y va descubriendo nuevas cosas como usar los switch, los cambios de vías, perdón, con DCC y controlarlos es mucho más fácil y obviamente cada vía es una sección y obviamente cuando uno se sumerge en el DCC va encontrando estas ventajas.
Oye, una pregunta que nosotros conocemos como el Started Set, el NC Power Cam, que es el que yo uso, pero hay también un Started de Digitrax. ¿Habrá uno de Hornby? Déjeme preguntarle. Jenny, in America, we use NC Power Cap. They have a starter kit, and I believe Digitrax has a new starter set. Do you have something in Hornby, or what do you use like a starter set in
terms of DCC starter sets, companies like Bachmann and Hornby do a very simple one, but it's very limited in terms of functionality. And I think a lot of people tend to go straight in with a more advanced system. So I currently use the NCE here. But previous to that, another popular brand is Gauge Master, which I have a feeling in the US it's sold rebadged as something else, or the Gauge Master is a rebadged version of the US system, and they tend to be very popular. We've also got the Z21 system, which is, I think that's Roku. So there's so there's a lot of, not necessarily top end, but I think most people tend to go in at the medium level rather than the basic systems.
Yeah. For example, we recommend obviously NC Power Cap because you can control, but also you can change CVs. And for example, in the small Bachmann, you can change CVs.
Okay. Here where we go to war. Let's go Digitrax, okay?
See, I have to say, I love the NCE Power Cab. I started out with the Gauge Master, and it was actually Ken Patterson that I saw advocating the NCE. And so I took a punt on one, and I've never looked back. It is so much more versatile, and you can do so much more. And a lot of it is just very, very simple to use. It's not too complicated. So I'm going to stick with this.
You know why I'm Digitrax? Because when I started I was obviously DC and then decided to go to DCC. There is a person in England who builds everything in Digitrax. I can't remember the name. He's very famous. Have a YouTube channel. He has a series, amazing layout in England. I can't remember the name now.
It's not Everard Junction, somebody like that, is it? Or is it somebody else?
It is massive layout. And he started like 15 years ago.
Right.
And, well, so I learned from him following YouTube. And I started doing, and then I started with Gemma Wright. And even I sold my layout and I started a new one because I learned so easy. That's me again. I never used NCA. I saw them in different layouts, but I feel Gemma Wright and Digitrax and points and for me it was very easy.
See, I think a lot of these systems they're all very good. They do things in a slightly different way, but they're all good at what they do. So I wouldn't say you must buy this in preference to anything else. But certainly I've heard good things about a lot of the other systems, but I'm happy with the NCE.
Yeah. I think it's like everything, like cars, or we have our preference and we feel with one car or another brand more safe, or let's say.
Yeah, you always get people who they'll buy into a particular brand and then they will live and breathe that brand, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's superior to everything else.
That's correct. Let me translate. Tuvimos una pequeña discusión un poco de, más que plática, de cuáles son los started set de DCC. Obviamente hablamos de NC Power Cab, Digitrax. Al final Jenny nos comenta que, bueno, cada sistema es bueno, cada cosa tiene sus beneficios y ella no va a decir este es uno bueno, el otro, sino lo que se hace la comparación con los carros, que al final de cuentas uno tiene el que se adapta a uno, el que económicamente en ese momento, pero lo importante, y yo creo que como un poco para cerrar este punto es, si pueden, compren un set DCC cuando estén empezando, les va a ayudar mucho, van a controlar varias máquinas, lo van a disfrutar. Creo que eso es lo importante de tener un sistema DCC, no se preocupen. Ok, Jenny, we have almost an hour. It's been really fast. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Before we pass to the last section, would you like to add something else that we don't ask, something that you would like to share with us?
I'm trying to think. I don't know, because we've covered so many different areas. I can't think of anything.
Oh, well, you mentioned Everett Johnson. Please,
yes.
if you have the email of that guy, please send to me. I love to interview because I'm a big fan and I learn a lot of.
I don't know him personally, but I do know of his channel. I'm trying to think, because there are some very big YouTubers in the UK, and some of us do know each other, but I don't personally know Everard Junction. But it is quite a nice little community that most people seem to know most people. And I love that that kind of small town feel that you get, that nobody seems bigger than the community.
Oh, that's great. Let me translate that. Le estaba preguntando de un youtuber que se llama Everard Johnson, que mucho de lo que yo he aprendido es con él. Le pregunté si lo conocía para que me mandara su correo y me dice que personalmente no lo conoce, pero que es una comunidad muy pequeña, que realmente el sentimiento es de nadie es más importante que la comunidad, y creo que eso es algo importante del ferromodelismo. Creo que esto es algo muy característico de Latinoamérica. Siempre hay alguien, o no sé, siempre hay alguien que le decimos el frijolito en el arroz, o sea, como la mancha. Alguien que no quiere convivir, todo eso. Pero bueno, el canal es esto, tratar de todos convivir, ver nuestros diferentes niveles de conocimiento y al final todos por el hobby, que creo que es lo más importante. Y no sé, Martín, ¿algo más que se te ocurra?
Sí, estaba buscando el ferrocarriles inglés, le voy a preguntar a Jenny si lo conoce. Jenny, I just found the YouTube channel. It's McKinley Railway.
McKinley.
Yes, I know of them. Yes.
Yeah, so that's the person I learned. So, like I say, following YouTube, because he was the only one, and he explained it very good on that time. Like I say, that's the reason I'm DC Drugs.
So. Y ahora que lo recuerdo, hay otra persona, Chadwick.
Chadwick.
Yes.
Esta va a ser la sección de recomendación de canales europeos. I'm talking that this is the section of the YouTube European channels. Chadwick, Everett Johnson, of course, yes. Jenny Kirk. This is the most important. Well, we have many more.
It is amazing, Jennifer, what you're doing. Like I say, the way you open the hobby to many people. Like I say, it is for us, and it's sad. Like I say, we have so many languages around the world because could be so easy. We talk the same language, but everything you do is fun. All the time, the effort. Like I say, because not many people understand how hard it is to put videos in YouTube, and even if fun for us, it is like an extra job. And
very much. I think some people maybe look at you, if you put out a 20-minute video, they go, well, that only took you 20 minutes to record. So
editing and many things.
And besides, and it can easily take anywhere up to a couple of weeks if it's a very complicated video to film all the bits, research, put it all together, and then edit it. And you end up with a 20-minute video, but it's had so much work gone into it. So like at the moment, I've just finished today filming a video on the reason these are out, on the Cobalt S levers. I've just done a video on them. but I've now got to edit it, and I will probably still be editing it this time tomorrow, because there's so much to pull in and put together.
Yeah.
Sí,
Yeah.
hablamos de todo el esfuerzo que la gente no ve. A lo mejor ve un video de 20 minutos, pero no te tardaste 20 minutos de la parte de edición. Y nos comenta Jenny que acaba de terminar un video y que probablemente mañana esté terminando todavía la edición.
Sí,
pero lo
¿no?
importante es la pasión con lo que haces, ¿no? O sea, realmente es lo que la gente no ve, todo lo que hacemos atrás y con gusto.
Y también destacar la humildad, o sea, la gente que se abre. Esto es un buen ejemplo, o sea, Jenny es una persona que realmente tiene, no quiero llamar fama porque no es la palabra correcta, pero que se abra humildemente a compartir tiempo con nosotros, con lo que hoy en día el tiempo vale, ¿no? Así que...
Sí. Oye, y antes de cerrar, la última pregunta que siempre se nos va, ¿cuál sería su consejo para los nuevos, jóvenes, adultos, los que quieren entrar por primera vez al ferromodelismo? ¿Cuál sería? Si quieres, hazla tú y...
Okay, Jennifer, this is the last question before we say, we really appreciate your time and thank you very much. Normally, to close the show, we ask, what is your advice to the person who wants to start in the hobby today? So he has nothing, he has no knowledge, and suddenly he wants to start, or she wants to start.
I think the biggest thing that you need is confidence. If you have confidence in your own ability and you're prepared to look at what other people do and learn from that and also experiment, then there's nothing that you can't do. And there's so many tasks in this hobby that I see so many people who will say, oh, I can't do that. And actually what they need to do is try, because I think so many things are actually far easier than you think if you let yourself succeed.
Very nice.
Muy sencillo y total, como digo, confianza, que te permitas hacerlo y que no te pongas, mucha gente pensamos en el fracaso antes de empezarlo. Creo que es lo que dice, que lo hagas, ¿no, Martín?
Sí, hay que animarse, hay que probar y no rendirse. Es muy positiva, muy positiva. Well, Jennifer, I'm going to say thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Really, I follow you for some time, and really for me it's a pleasure to share 1 hour, 20 almost with you, and we really appreciate what you're doing, and obviously we would like to talk with you in the future. And
no worries.
if one day you want to talk with us, happy to take the South American model too.
Yeah.
But really, we really appreciate it, and we appreciate you are in the model rival world. You are a famous person, as we call celebrity, and you are humble to talk with us, and really that's amazing.
No worries.
Ya, prácticamente Martín se robó mis palabras. Agradecer a la humildad de Jenny, compartir con nosotros, considerada una de las personas a la vanguardia en el ferromodelismo europeo y bueno, poder esta oportunidad con nosotros, pues realmente es muy importante para nosotros y se lo agradecemos. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Ahora.
Thank you.